Hello everyone. So today we'll be starting with chapter 5, which is popular struggles and movements. In the earlier chapters, we discussed about the importance of power sharing in a democracy and how different tiers of government, whether you talk about the union government, you talk about the state government, or you talk about the local governance, how sharing of power is done. In this chapter we will carry on this discussion further and see how those who have power, they are restricted by the influence and pressure which is exerted on them. Democracy almost invariably involves conflict of interest. There are so many conflict of interest between people, different viewpoints. These differences are often expressed in organized ways, and people who have differences, they often express it in the form of protest and movements. Those who are in power require to balance these conflicting demands and pressure. They need to know how to balance pressure and work in an environment which is under pressure or demands a lot of challenges. We began this chapter with a discussion of how struggles around conflicting demands and pressure shapes democracy, and now how this, is going to affect the very idea of democracy. This leads to an analysis of different ways and organizations through which ordinary citizens can play a role in democracy. In this chapter, we look at the indirect ways of influencing politics. How politics is influenced. We look at that through pressure groups and movement. We'll study about pressure groups and you'll come to know what do you mean by the pressure group. And then this leads us to the next chapter, to the direct ways of controlling um, politic power in the form of political parties. And then we will know that how politics and political parties come along. Let's see some popular struggles in Nepal and Bolivia. So, okay. Do you remember the story of triumph of democracy in Poland? Do you remember that how you know Poland was first a communist country where only the one party could stand only one party could stand in an election, and only particular leaders were they stood up for the election and you could only vote amongst them. We studied it last year, that in the first chapter of class 9, this Poland story. The story reminded us about the role played by the people in the making of democracy. Let us read the two recent stories um, of that kind and see how power is exercised in democracy. Let's see that how power sharing is done. First, we will study about the movement in Nepal. So Nepal, it witnessed an extraordinary popular movement in April 2006. What happened that the movement was aimed at restoring democracy. All the people of the people of Nepal wanted democracy, and Nepal, you might recall, was one of the third wave countries that had won democracy in 1990. So they had won the democracy in this thing 1990. Even Nepal had a monarchy before, okay. Although the king formally remained the head of the he was a king was a he was the nominal head, you can say. The real power exercised probably by the elected representative, just like United Kingdom. uh King Birendra, who so the name of the king on that time was Birendra, who has accepted this transition from absolute monarchy to constitutional monarchy, that only for the name of the name saying constitutional monarchy, was killed in a mysterious massacre of the royal family in 2001. So what happened that the king Birendra, he was killed in an unmysterious way. So he was only not killed. The whole massacre was done of the royal family in 2001. King Gayendra, the new king of Nepal, was not prepared to accept democratic. So after the death of Birendra, the new king, who was King Gyanendra, he was not prepared to accept the democratic rule. He took advantage of the weakness and unpopularity of the democratically elected government, and that is how he took advantage of the government who was democratically elected, as in through elections. And in February 2005, the king dismissed the he said that in 2005 what happened, he dismissed the then prime minister and dissolved the popularity popularly elected election. The movement of April 2006 was aimed at regaining popular control of the over the government from the king. So this movement was that the king, there was this mysterious massacre of the entire royal family in 2001, and the new king who overtook King Birendra was King Gainendra. He overtook them, he overtook from him. And what happened that he was supposed, since in 1990, Nepal got became an independent country, but what he did was that he dismissed the then prime minister, who was whoever was the prime minister. He dismissed his government, and that's how he popularly dissolved the parliament. And then in 2006, the people fought against this thing. Okay, so political parties and people of Nepal in a rally demanding the restoration. So this movement was about restoring the democracy. They said that we want our democracy system back. You can see the pictures here. Okay, Swayam Seva, I think it's self governance or something like that's written there. So you can see people, participating in the protest and putting their demands in front. The next thing is that all major political parties in the parliament formed a seven-party alliance. So there was this seven-party alliance and called for a 4 day strike. They called for a 4 day strike in Kathmandu, the country's capital. This protest soon turned into an indefinite strike. So this protest, it became an indefinite strike, as in which the Maoist, insurgent, and various other organizations joined hands. So now what happened that this protest, which was a 4 day protest, 4 day strike in Kathmandu, it turned into an indefinite strike, in which even the Maoist and insurgent groups, who are the extremists, and in any this thing, and other all the organizations, they joined hands. People defied curfew and took to the streets. The security forces found themselves unable to take on more than 1 lakh people who had gathered almost every day to demand the restoration of democracy. So there was this protest that had been going every day, and every day, this protest, indefinite, days ka protest. And it was very becoming very becoming a big challenge to handle all these people. The number of protesters reached between 3 to 5 lakhs on April 21. So what happened on April 21, 2006, that almost around 5 lakhs people, just imagine, okay, just imagine 5,000 people in an area. Now take that number to 5 lakh. These many people were gathered, and they served an ultimatum to they said that we are giving you a final warning. The leaders of the movement rejected half-hearted concessions and made by the king. So the king, of course, made have some compromise or like concession. Okay, I'll agree to this much and everything. But they said, no, we are not agreeing to all this. We want full democracy. They stuck to the demands for restoration of parliament, power of all party organization, and a new constituent assembly. And they said that we want all the things back. We want a democratic country. We want a constituent assembly. We want an all party government. So what happened on 24th April 2006, the last day of the ultimatum, the king was forced to concede to all the three demands. So what happened finally on 24th April 2006, the king had no choice and he had to concede to all the three demands. The seven party alliance, they chose Giriraj Prasad Koirala. So he was now chosen as the new prime minister of the interim government. Interim government is the like the time between the when the one government is dissolved and the previous government is withdrawal and the new government is to be formed, but for that time in between somebody has to manage all that thing. For that time, Mr. Giriraj Prasad Koilala was chosen. So okay, the restored parliament met and passed laws taking away most of the powers of the king. So they took most of the powers of the king, and the seven party alliance and the Maoist came to an understanding about how the new constituent assembly was going to be elected. So the Maoist and the Seven Party Alliance, they decided over how the new Constitution Assembly was going to be elected. This struggle came to be known as Nepal's second movement for democracy. So one time movement they already had in this thing in 1990s when they became an democratic country. Okay, so this is the second time when they were again fighting for their democracy because of one king, King Gyanendra, who disagreed to give the powers to the constituent, so to the representatives who were fairly elected. And the struggle of the Nepali people is a source of inspiration to democratics of or to inspiration to democratics all over the world, and that is why how the people of Nepal, they inspire all the democracies in the world. So what is the meaning of Maoist? The communist who believe in the ideology of Mao. So Mao was a Chinese leader and leader of the Chinese Revolution. They seek to overthrow the government through an armed revolution so as to establish the rule of the peasants and workers. So they talk about basically Mao talks about the working class. The work peasants and workers and everything. One is mouse, and then we have extremists and everything, all the other there are other parties also. Now we've seen the movement of Nepal. Now let's come to the story of what happened in Bolivia. Okay, so the story of Poland and that of Nepal apply to the struggle of establishing or restoring democracy. We know that in the Poland we have the communist party and everything, that story, and we now also known as the Nepal, know the story of Nepal, where on 24th April 2006 finally the this thing ultimatum, which this is important, okay, this part about restoration of this thing, finally ultimatum was given to the king, and they said if you don't accept it, we are going to overthrow you. We are just saying you nicely, politely and everything. Now you know the story of both the countries, but the role of popular struggle does not come to an end with establishment of democracy. So the protest and movement does not only end at getting the democracy and everything. Okay, people's successful struggle against privatization of water in Bolivia reminds us the popular struggle, that that popular struggles are integral to the working of democracy. Okay, excuse me, God bless me. So it's not that if you've got the democracy and everything, then that is fine. That's just the start. Okay, for example, these all these movement, whether you fight for something, you fight for justice and all these things, these are all the important parts of a democracy, and that defines what a democracy should and should not do. It actually defines different aspects of democracy. So Bolivia is a very poor country. If I It's a South American country. It borders with Peru, Brazil, Paraguay, Argentina and Chile. Okay, it's a land I think it's a landlocked country. I can see it on the map. I'll show you. Wait. So the World Bank pressurized the government to give up its control on municipal water supply. So World Bank said that the government, you give up the control of what municipal water supply. The government sold these rights for the city of Cochabamba to the multinational company. So they said, okay, now they were under the pressure that the World Bank, because the World Bank is from where you take loans and everything for all the many of the schemes which are actually sponsored by them. So we'll not study about that role, but he said that they were under pressure since the World Bank asked them, so they had no other choice but to agreeing to the fact that okay, if you want this thing, then yeah, okay, you can take this yeah thing this municipal water rights to the multinational company. So the company, what they did, that they immediately increased the price of water by 4 times. Chalo, we say that not inflammation is a burning vagera, sorry. That's a medical term. Inflammation is a medical term. Inflation is an economic term sometimes. Okay, so what happened, that they said that what this multinational company did was they increase the price. So we understand that due to inflation and everything, this thing the prices of things go up. But as a common, most basic resource that anybody needs, the essential thing that it needs is water for everyday life, and you're increasing that price 4 times. And please, the first word we heard about Bolivia is that it's a poor country. How can you afford to give 4 times the money? Many people received monthly water bill of 1,000 rupees in a country where the average income of around people is 5,000 rupees a month. So just imagine if you are, you know, if you have a salary of just 5,000 rupees, and out of this you have every month 1,000 has to go for water. How are you going to survive? How are you going to sustain? You not, you look for cheaper sources, or you look for lower standards, and or you will just protest that why first my this thing wasn't this much. And even in India the price is not this much, the one that is mentioned like 1,000 rupees. Go check, go, okay, do this activity, go to your parents, ask them about your monthly water bill, monthly electricity bill, and then compare. Okay, so this led to a spontaneous popular struggle. Of course it had to go, because you increase the price of something as basic as water. So, this led to a spontaneous popular protest in January 2002. A new alliance of labor, human rights, and community leaders organized a successful 4-day general strike in the city. So, what they did was they organized a strike. The government agreed to negotiate and strike, and the strike was called off. Yet, nothing happened. The police resorted to brutal. So, most of the times. The government tries to suppress the protest and everything by using very different means. Okay, for example, here in the case they used police force to suppress this protest. When the agitation was starting again in February, another strike followed in April, and the government imposed martial law. So martial law is basically military law. Okay, so, but the power of the people forced the officials of the MNC to flee the city and made the government concede to all the demands. But the people, we lot of times we talk about this public power. We talk about public. If we talk about the power of unity, and that's what was seen here. Finally, what happened that this thing the sorry, just let me just keep it aside. Okay, so this thing that there was this the people of Bolivia, they forced the officials of the multinational company to to run away from the country, and they made the government concede to all the demands and of the protest. So the contract with the MNC was cancelled, and the water supply was restored to the municipalities at old rates. So whatever the old rates were, they were again back, and the again the power, or the you'll say the managing power of water supply was given back to the municipal corporation. And that is why it is known, this protest and everything is known as Bolivia's water protest. Okay, so even if you also, if you also, a lot of times, even in today's times, we come across so many protests in which people go, and then you will see actions, in the favor of protesters. For example, tree cutting for development projects and everything is a very solid example here. In a lot of places, trees or for a forest areas are cut for a new development project to come up there. And a lot of times, what has happened, that the local people, they've protested against a multinational company coming and or coming there and building something. And it, in this fight, the people have won the war against such policies and everything. So, are you suggesting that strike, dharna, band, and demonstrations are a good thing? I thought it happened only in our country because we were not mature democracy. So this is what this two people are saying, that I thought that this protest and everything happens only in our country, because we are not a mature country. Mature, we don't are not a mature democracy. No, but in fact, I would say that it is a sign that if there are protests and everything, demands, dharna, um, and everything, then it is a sign of a mature democratic country. It's opposite of that notion. So now let's come to talk about democracy and popular struggles. These two, now we've seen the story of Bolivia and that of Nepal. Okay, so are very different, are are from very different context, because here one instance is of a government, whereas the other is actually making a multinational company flee the country. So the movement in Nepal was to establish democracy, while the struggle in Bolivia involves claims on an elected democratic government. So these are two different contexts. Yes, the popular struggle in Bolivia was about one specific policy, while the struggle in Nepal was about the foundation of a country's policy. So here, it's written actually very true that here we are talking about just one specific policy in Bolivia, where we are talking about the foundation of a country. Our foundation is our constitution in India, and everything that has been done in India is done according to our constitution. So India's constitution is our is the foundation stone. But both these struggles were successful, but the impact was at different levels. So of course both of these had a very different level of impact. Despite these differences, both the stories are share some elements which are relevant to the study of past and future democracies. Both these are instances of political conflicts. They show political conflict that led to a popular struggle. In both the cases, the struggle involved mass mobilization. You've seen that there were five, every day 1 lakh people used to turn up to protest and strike in Nepal, and on the final day 5 lakh people came up. And it was so difficult for even the police to the for the police to manage and everything. Public demonstration of mass support clinched this dispute. Finally, both instances involved critical role of political organization. If you recall the first chapter of class 9 textbook, this is how democracy has evolved over the world. We can therefore draw few conclusions from these examples. Democracy evolves through popular struggles. These all struggle movements, they actually shape the very idea of democracy. Okay, so democracy actually evolves. It gets a chance to evolve this thing. Um, gets a chance to evolve through the struggle. We talked about the expanding scope of fundamental rights. Where we talked about that how one thing can, for example, we talked to say that that right to livelihood is included under right to life under article this thing 21. Because if you don't have an economic this thing source, or income, salary vagera, how are you going to sustain? And that whole case of slum dwellers being forced to go and settle somewhere else, and their whole livelihood depending on the city life, because they offer some cheap services to the city, where you talk about many kinds of services. So yeah, so that's about how the this expanding scope of we spoke about that fundamental right. So it is possible that some significant decisions may take place through consensus and may not evolve in at any conflict. Sometimes it happens that yes, okay, if there's a this thing something debatable, they clear it out through consensus, and that's how the conflict is avoided. But that would be an exception. Defining movement of democracy usually involve conflict between the groups who have exercised powers and those who aspire. So it's usually this conflict is between those people who have power and those who want a share in the power. This share in the power, they want to share power. The movements come when when the government is going through transition to democracy, expansion of democracy, and deepening of democracy. So that's what happened. How there are different phases of democracy. For example, 1990, uh, Nepal got its democracy. Okay, but what happened that a new king a king dies, and a new king takes over. He wants from a constitutional nominee. He says that no, it is only going to be a monarchy system and everything. So that's what happening. And then you have like for example, the water war of Bolivia. Then how they are saying that they are actually expanding the scope of democracy by protesting against one specific policy. And there are many other examples also. I'll tell you time and when it is required to tell. Democratic conflict is resolved through mass mobilizations, and a lot of times, these democratic conflicts, they are resolved through mass mobilization. Sometimes it is possible that the conflict is resolved is by using existing institutions like parliament and the judiciary. But when there is a deep dispute, very often these institutes themselves get involved in a dispute. So a lot of times, if that this thing issue is very conflict, and sometimes, it also happens that institution also gets in a very gets sort of in a dispute. We have seen examples, especially between parliament and judiciary. There have been a lot of instances where they both have been in a conflicting position. The resolution has to come from outside, in such cases it has to come from outside. From where? Outside, from the people, from you, me, who are the citizens of the country. These conflicts and mobilizations are based on new political organizations. True, there's an element of spontaneity in all such historic movements, but the spontaneous public participation becomes effective with the help of organized politics. So if all the people are fighting, for something or protesting against it, it has to be in a very organized manner. It just cannot be like in hapartabad, or just be very haphazard, or be very disorganized, and everything. It has to all come in a this thing, together in a very formalized way or organized manner, so that the voices are heard and in a better way. So that even if you say, okay, if you are saying that you have a particular problem, then you have a problem with a particular policy, also you should also tell us the solution, ki acha you can do this thing or whatever. That's the best thing, of being organized. There can be many agencies of organized politics. These include political parties, pressure groups, and movement groups. So we've seen these political parties or movements, groups who've come together and make and everything organized. For do you remember this thing, corruption corruption movement, anti-corruption movement that happened? So the leader of that movement was Anna Hazare. Anna Hazare is still alive, and you can search about him. He's known as the anti-corruption man of India. And yeah, you can study about his hunger strike he set on Ramlila Maidan, and how he protested and everything. And that the chief minister of Delhi, Mr. Arvind Kejriwal, he was a big supporter of Anna Hazare, and he was like his right hand, and everything. All the decisions and everything were decided by them and everything. Later, Mr. Arvind Kejriwal joined politics, and that thus became the creation of the Aam Aadmi Party, which is AAP, and so on. So what I am trying to say here is all these movements have to be organized, so that finally a result can come. So what happened in 1984? Let's see about the story of the Karnataka government set up a company which is called Karnataka Pulpwood Limited. So what Karnataka government did in 1984? About 30,000 hectares of land was given to the which land was given virtually free to the company for 40 years. So you're giving a piece of land for 40 years to a company for virtually free. Okay. Much of this land was used by local farmers for grazing land for the cattle. However, the company began to plant eucalyptus trees. So the company decided that they are going to sorry, not build. They are going to plant eucalyptus trees in this 30,000 hectares of land, which could be used for making, which would ultimately be used for making paper. So what happened then in 1987, there was a movement regarding this, which was called uh, Kitiko Hachiko, meaning pluck and plant, matlab sorting a non-violent protest. So let's see what was it. We know that it was a pluck and plant movement where people plucked the eucalyptus plant and planted saplings of trees that were useful to the people. So what happened that they gave the land to this company for free, for actually 40 years. Okay. And they the company thought to plant eucalyptus trees, which was would which would uh, finally end up in making paper. So what happened that there was this non-violent protest by the people, in which they decided that they are going to pluck the plants which are planted by these people, and they are going to in that place they are going to plant saplings of trees which are actually going to benefit the local people, useful to the. Suppose you belong to any of the following groups, what arguments would you put forward to defend your side? Local farmer, local environmentalist, activist working so what is the fault between the in sorry not between with the eucalyptus plant is that it takes, drains all the water of the soil. Matlab, it's a plant that requires a lot of water, so the water of all the area will be taken away by this plant. So of course there is going to be change in the ecosystem of that area, and where will the animals who used to go there to graze are going to go. So that's how it's going to affect. So does it mean that whichever side managed to mobilize a bigger crowd gets with whatever it wants? Are we saying that might is right in a democracy? No, we are not saying that might is right. We are just saying that we are making our this thing, um, through mass mobilization and everything, we are making our voices heard. There's a difference between who's wrong and right in this. We're not talking about that. We are not saying that the whoever has the bigger mass mobilization, they are right. Of course, if one person is right on one side and three wrong people are there, which are against it, it does not make them that since the three people are larger in the are big more in one side, they are right. All one good, one bad देखो, one bad act cannot be defined by another bad act. It's the same thing. So what we are saying that mass mobilization is actually done so that voices of the people are heard, and not that might whoever has bigger number has to be right or wrong. Okay.